Hong Kong never actually had a democracy when it was a British colony. If you're going to criticize, and especially British, criticize China right now, oh, what about 100 years Euro? What about opium wars? Everybody forgot that after 2001 ascension of China into WTO, Hong Kong kind of lost its role. It's a big existential problem for what's going to happen to Hong Kong economy. And in this kind of situation, people are always going to blame the other, blame the mainlanders. They are Chinese, we are not Chinese, we are Hong Kongers. But oh no, I mean, like 3 generations ago, everybody came from Guangdong. It's even more Chinese, you use traditional characters. Xinjiang was highly insecure, highly destabilized province. There was hundreds of terrorist attacks, many dead, bombings in the capital. And these kind of things, the Western media never cared about. The hypocrisy is palpable. I'm trying to be really objective about China. It doesn't mean that it's justifiable to do this now. They are being treated in a completely horrible way. I don't think this is completely moral. My friend in Taiwan, he always tells me, oh my God, you're speaking these kind of things about China. I wanted to say, I'm in China, I'm speaking this freely and nobody bothers me. People in China respect harmony, 和平, 和谐. It's opposite from liberal democracy in the West. We can criticize, we can talk about it, but we shouldn't do anything radical about it. I'm going to be very critical of Croatian foreign policy. The only kind of constant in it is that we are listening to Brussels or the European Commission. It doesn't matter, we're a small country. We should be more independent and try to draw benefits from all sides like Serbia is doing. Serbia has extremely good relationship with China and with Russia and is trying to get into the European Union at the same time. And there is this Croatian saying that kada se veliki cucki biju, malima mjesto za stolom, which means when the big dogs are fighting, the small dogs should go under the table. Okay, you guys are fighting, but look, it's not a zero-sum game. You will both benefit in Croatia, and Croatia will benefit more than if it chooses only one. China is just going back to where it was before, Zhongguo or Middle Kingdom being the center stage in the world trade. Even if it's one country, two system, it's still sovereign territory of People's Republic of China. And that's all.
Pozdrav svima, it's Keybros. Welcome to a new episode of Soft Talk, where unlike BBC's Hard Talk, the interviewees won't find it hard to talk. Today, we are very honored to have a guest from Zagreb in Croatia. His name is Franjo. So Franjo, do you mind introducing yourself to our audience?
First of all, I just need to commend your Croatian pronunciation.
Thank you.
Pozdrav svima, really, really good. I didn't expect that one. Anyway, my name is, in English it's Francis, but my name is Franjo in Croatian. I come from Croatia, Šulaj Hvačan, but just to put it in short, I came here to Hainan province, China in 2016, almost 5 years now. First, I came here on the Confucius Institute scholarship. I was in that Hanyu Qiao Chinese bridge competition. Actually, I loved China before. I studied Chinese studies for like 3 years. And I also studied philosophy and sociology as a kind of a double major. But at the same time, I was really interested in international trade and business. This is just kind of perfect match because China was just rising unstoppably for the last couple of decades, combining Chinese culture, love of the language with personal development and, of course, profit to benefit both my society in Croatia and my new home here as an expat in China. There's also this Zimao Gang, Zimao Chu, Hainan free trade port and free trade zone. So it's going to be a really good future here on Hainan province. Recently, I founded a company together with my Chinese girlfriend. It's a Chinese foreign joint venture. You can see it here. At this moment, there is this huge tension between two fundamentally different cultures. They also say ideologies. I think it's not so much ideological as they want it to be. The current world hegemon and the second power that's gonna overtop the hegemon very soon. There's this fear of the Thucydides trap. It's a Greek historian who posed the idea that when one empire was about to reach to the point where it's stronger than the hegemon, the strongest empire on earth, almost every time in the history of humanity, like 16 out of 20, there was a war. So it's going to be very interesting times that we're going to live in.
What do you think about the situation in Hong Kong in the past 2 years?
I was really upset and annoyed by the whole situation with the protests terrorists. So Western media, the way they portrayed was like such a beautiful sight, festival of democracy, while Molotov cocktails were flying, burning. Hong Kong went into recession already then, attacking all the private property that's mainland owned or not in their cause, mostly done by 16 or 18-year kids who have no idea and been radicalized or manipulated by foreign propaganda. And it just saddened me deeply. But later, when the national security law was implemented, I think that was a really good move on the Beijing side, because they didn't do anything rash, any kind of sanction, any kind of intervention. I remember somebody was posting, People's Liberation Army is on the streets. Yeah, picture of them cleaning roadblocks. That's what they do, so that the economy can function. People can go to work. My God, criminals. National security law, I just read about it in detail a few days ago. And this kind of law, every country in the world has. Anti-subversion, anti-separatism. This is the most common thing that you will find anywhere. It's actually much milder than these kind of laws in USA about Snowden and the Espionage Act. The people are afraid that it will collide with basic law, because basic law guarantees freedom of speech. And this is kind of in contradiction, but still haven't seen that much. Hong Kong never actually had a democracy when it was a British colony. If you're going to criticize, and especially British, criticize China right now, what about 100 years, what about opium wars? Everybody forgot that. In Qing dynasty, 90% of all male population was completely addicted to opium. It was absolutely terrible, and they were devastated, as we know, the century of humiliation. Okay, Hong Kong people definitely have a say. We should approach this diplomatically. We should address their problems. Martin Jacques, I think, as he expounded, the problem of Hong Kong is economical. The Hong Kong elites, who are mostly developers, are driving the prices up of everything, making very hard for young people to live. Of course, they have ties with Beijing, but that's another problem. I remember a very good friend of mine, expert on China, told me one of the first things when the protests really escalated, Carrie Lam was in a meeting with top officials from Beijing talking about 10,000 new affordable apartments for people to have, So they didn't understand this. After 2001 ascension of China into WTO, Hong Kong kind of lost its role. It's a big existential problem for what's going to happen to Hong Kong economy. And in this kind of situation, people are always going to blame the other, blame the mainlanders. They are Chinese, we are not Chinese, we are Hong Kongers. But no, I mean, like 3 generations ago, everybody came from Guangdong. It's even more Chinese, you use traditional characters. I've read different kind of polls, and I guess there is some bias in some of them. But according to 2 polls I read, about 60% of people in Hong Kong support the law, either slightly or greatly or completely, but support the law. Of course, if you break it down into demographics, like young people, probably opposite. But if you take all people together, it's more than half. So all this paranoia that's happening in the West is just a type of information war that mostly USA is doing against China and against Chinese accession to the world throne. Not even to the world throne, but to just a technologically more prominent and economically more prominent role. Even if it's one country, 2 system, it's still sovereign territory of People's Republic of China. And that's all.
Croatia is part of China's Belt and Road Initiative and the 16+1 summit for Central and Eastern European countries. Croatia is also yet to ban Huawei from its 5G construction, and in fact, a Chinese construction company is now building the Pelješac Bridge connecting mainland Croatia to Dubrovnik, which will avoid border crossings into Bosnia and Herzegovina. So what do you make of modern Croatia-China relations, given that you are a Croatian expat living in China?
I'm going to be very critical of Croatian foreign policy. Croatian foreign policy is completely inconsistent. It's very weak. The only kind of constant in it is that we are listening to Brussels or the European Commission, appealing to them. Of course, Germany, because Germany has the huge influence. I think that's great. Germany is a good country. They're kind of trying to balance between USA, Russia, and China right now, especially after Donald Trump. I mean, who wouldn't want to do that? And especially because they're dependent on China. And Pelješac was a question for a long, long time. And I think we only started to build it, to approve it after we got a green light from the EU. I don't like the situation as it is, but that's how it is. Unfortunately, our foreign policy is not independent. It's not sovereign as a sovereign country would need to have it. It doesn't matter we're a small country. We should be more independent and try to draw benefits from all sides like Serbia is doing. Serbia has extremely good relationship relationship with China and with Russia, and is trying to get into European Union at the same time. As for Huawei, I'm pretty sure they're still on the fence, not to make anybody angry and just trying to balance the situation. But I'm afraid from what I know, they're gonna just leave it to Ericsson or somebody else. This war on Huawei was a very complicated topic with microchips. China is now trying to build domestically the 5 micrometers ones that are the most advanced, and that Taiwan Semiconductor Corporation builds actually. Huawei is in a really hard position, and you can see that in Croatia too. But 16+1, we do attend, and we hosted, I think like 3 or 4 years ago. And it was a big thing in Croatia. Croatian media was amazed. Look at the Chinese delegation. There's like 2 Boeing 747 planes for one delegation. How many different diplomats, business people, representatives of different branches of government? It's crazy how many people came to a really small country. You would think it's insignificant. If American delegation comes here, it's like 2 people maybe. It's funny. Here there is 2 plane loads of people. It was really productive. The whole 16+1 summit was in Zagreb, in my capital city. I think we are trying to reap some benefits from it. And this Pelješac Most is a big national pride for us. And the Chinese company, they are doing a great job. Absolutely most competitive possible. It would be crazy not to choose them.
What do you make of the controversial situation now in Xinjiang?
I'm trying to be really objective about China. I love China. Can people see? Of course, I'm not a member of the party. I can be, but my girlfriend is, and I support Chinese Communist Party. But when there is something I consider problematic, precisely because I support, I would need to criticize or say, guys, I don't think this is completely moral. I mean, I do understand why this is happening, but I can still speak out and say what I think should be according to some universal moral principles. And it's a Chinese principle anyway, very important in socialism with Chinese characteristic doctrine of zero peeping, right? The party has enormous capacity to self-correct. We've seen this in the last 40 years. Eric X. Lee showed that in his brilliant TED Talk. Recommend everybody to watch it. Party changed so many different policies, and right now, of course, there's going to happen some things that are not good. Let me start with the good part. Xinjiang was highly insecure, highly destabilized province. There's a long history to it. Since 1997 to 2017, there was hundreds of terrorist attacks, and at least a dozen of them that were like really serious, with hundreds of people stabbed and injured, many dead, bombings in the capital. And these kind of things, the Western media never cared about. If you read Western media right now, the hypocrisy is palpable. You can see they always talk about Xinjiang, these terrible things that's happening now. Okay, yeah, but at the same time, it was like a keg of powder there, and it was about to explode maybe. And that's actually what, according to scientific literature I read, the Chinese elites, the Chinese government, Xi Jinping and Chen Shuangguo, who is now the party secretary of this autonomous region. He was in Tibet before, so he also did a good job there with surveillance systems and everything, so they put him there. They had this idea that it's going to be a Chinese Libya kind of scenario. We don't have proof, but it's probably what CIA was doing, funding East Turkestan separatist groups. It's really dangerous. Could have been a war which would be much worse than anything that happens now. Because at least now people aren't dying, although they are being treated in a completely horrible way, from what I know, not justifiable morally. And I want to clear the air. Just because I say all these things with Xinjiang, what happened before, it doesn't mean that it's justifiable to do this now. Still, some things shouldn't be done. Maybe they could have done it in a more subtle way, but it's what it is. Now they also gave a lot of ammo for the Western media to criticize them with a good reason. And now they're on the defensive. And now international community wants to boycott the Olympics. It's really complicated. At least as a kind of giving props to China, people think, oh, you know, you're in China, you don't have freedom of speech, you can say anything. Well, I'm in China 5 years, I have a company here, somebody doesn't believe me, I can show outside, there is some restaurants there. I wanted to say, I'm in China, I'm speaking this freely and nobody bothers me. People in China respect harmony, 和平, 和谐. It's opposite from liberal democracy in the West. It's important there is this peace and cooperation. We can criticize, we can talk about it, but we shouldn't do anything radical about it. And as long as you have this attitude, this society will prosper. And it will also get better about human rights and rule of law. It will definitely not get better if the international community does sanctions and try to really demonize China. It's not going to help. It's just going to make it worse. We'll see about a few months if I'm still in China, but I know I'm completely free here. I have a friend in Taiwan. He always tells me, oh my God, you're speaking these kind of things about China. I'm in Taiwan. I'm afraid to talk so openly about Taiwanese government. Maybe he's not serious, but then again, it's different because obviously there's danger anywhere, these kind of geopolitical games.
What do you think about the situation with Taiwan? Do you think Taiwan should reunify with China in the future, or should it retain the current status quo?
It should be unified. I mean, it's one people basically, but it's only Chiang Kai-shek escaped there. It's a civil war that haven't ended. The project of the great rejuvenation of Chinese nation, Minzu Fuxing, this project can't be done without unification. It can't. That's the principle the party has 100% dogmatically, and I agree with them. But the question of how are we going to do it and when are we going to do it? There's been a lot of hype recently, especially in last year when these generals testified in Congress that in 6 years, according to them, there's going to be invasion of Taiwan or something like that. I think it's completely ridiculous because I've read DOD, Department of Defense, Pentagon report about Chinese military strength 2019, analyzes Chinese ideology very deeply. It concludes very good on point that China developed during peacetime. All of Chinese development was during peacetime, economical cooperation, never regime change, 0 times. USA or Soviet Union, when it existed, tried regime changes, US about 80, Soviet Union about 50. Mostly in Latin America, Middle East, Africa, everywhere. China doesn't export poverty, doesn't export revolution, and doesn't make trouble with you. 还有什么好说的? I'm quoting Xi Jinping when he was vice president, I think, talking to representatives of Chinese diaspora, Huaqiao in Mexico. China is not going to do this militarily. A lot of China hawks and Chinese nationalists are hoping that's going to be Xi Jinping's legacy. If this happens, it's going to be terrible for everybody. Chinese people shouldn't be killing Chinese people again. 50 times, 100 times during history is enough. They should stop now. During the next 20 or 30 years, Taiwan will gradually come to be more like China, simply because of technology and surveillance and everything. But China will also become more like Taiwan, simply because of more rule of law, the more just society. I think this idea of one country, two systems, and a complete reunification at one point is really plausible in the future. According to the polls, almost 50% people in Taiwan, they didn't say they support Beijing, but they support status quo. Also about 20 or something say they support reunification with Beijing. The others are split. Should we declare independence now or later? But it's still a minority. The most complicated thing is mostly young people have this idea that they are Taiwanese, they're not Chinese. It's also ridiculous. Of course, they're Chinese. Not many people know this, but Taiwanese bureaucracy, not only it uses traditional character, Taiwanese bureaucracy uses classical Chinese, literary Chinese. 文言文. That's amazing. That blows my mind. So if you were to practice law in China, you would need to know classical Chinese and implement it. I mean, Taiwan, in many sense, kept a lot of these beautiful things about Chinese culture alive, which kind of were unfortunately destroyed during Cultural Revolution, but it's another problem, another topic. But now with Xi Jinping, they're coming more to light. He was known to quote Han Feizi, Chinese Machiavelli, as they call him, and he was also supportive of Confucianism, Rujiao, philosophers. I think he quote analects, Long Yu. There is also revitalization in this sense even here in China. So that's why I think the systems technologically and ideologically going to become so similar, they're just going to get assimilated into each other. And it's not even assimilation because it's the same nation. It's Han. Nothing really weird about it. Of course, America will try to cause some trouble, but I think even Japan and South Korea will realize in the future they have much more in common roots with Chinese culture than with some stupid ideas that came from America or from classical liberalism in 18th, 17th century Britain.
So how has your life been in China so far? Is it enjoyable? And can you share us a few episodes, both positive or negatives?
Negative stuff, almost nothing. Usually people remember negative stuff better. But for me, no. I mean, sometimes I go to Paichuso to do something. I just feel people are incompetent. But there are just young people. And there's so many different police stations across. And some are really good, some are not that good. But you know how they say, oh, China covered up coronavirus. Man, there's Hubei provincial government, which is like few percent of Chinese population, completely decentralized, like 70% of their money they get locally. And there is also Wuhan, municipal government. And inside Wuhan, which is a huge city, 11 million people with like 15 or 10 districts. Every district has like 20, 30 police stations. And there was this doctor who was spreading actually false rumors. He thought it was the original SARS, and it's not even his field. He was an ophthalmologist. And he was just saying, okay, don't spread rumors. These kind of things happen in China every day. China is huge. So these policemen, in this case, they just did their job. And later, the highest court in these matters in China actually commended him. And he was a Chinese patriot according to all of his Weibo history. But now in the media, he is portrayed as, oh, they silenced him. He's the victim. No, it's opposite. And nobody talks about it. China does this. No, it's a local police station, which is a part of a shoe inside the city, which is a part of a province, which is a really small part of China and really decentralized. I have a very good friend of mine who is an expert on China. He has a PhD from a really prestigious university. He told me that even the secretaries of the province don't have direct access to Xi Jinping or other members of the Politburo Standing Committee. Even they don't have, or it would take them a long time. So these few weeks that happened when people were starting to realize that, okay, there is some new weird disease, it will happen anywhere. In a country, excuse it, China, it's actually unbelievable how transparent and fast they were. And it's really bothering me a lot when I see in the media, nobody mentions this objectively, really nobody. On WeChat, some foreigner expat was, oh, no matter how long you're in China, you'll always be a tourist in their eyes, like, why? I'm like, what? What the hell is he talking about? I was thinking about this, and of course, these people think like that. They come here from Australia with just a bachelor's degree. They make more money than they would even make in Australia, where they can hardly find a job. And here they are really respected, but still, after 2 years being here, they can say one sentence, maybe, lai in pizio, something like this. I think it's disrespectful to a culture. You're here 2 years, you can't speak more than like 2 or 3 coherent sentences. Chinese people don't really care about this, but I care, and I think it is disrespectful, really. And of course, people are going to treat you like tourists, but if you speak to them, many times I've been told that I'm half Chinese. People just love when they see there's a foreigner who is really so in Western and so knowledgeable that even he can teach them about Zhuangzi or some other philosopher that they don't know almost nothing about. Dao De Jing or I Ching or Wu Zetian, whatever you like about Chinese history and Wen Yuan Wen poetry, of course, which is really important in China. Chinese people are really going to respect you a lot if you do this. And again, this kind of love and respect I get is only because I give it too. So it's always reciprocal, but that's basically the point of Confucianism. That's what I love about China.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing your honest experiences. Turning to a bit about the US-China conflict recently, how do you think Croatia should position itself in the conflict? Should it stay neutral?
Right now, it is neutral, yeah. And there is this Croatian saying that kada se veliki cudski bio malima mjesto za stolom, which means when the big dogs are fighting, the small dogs should go under the table. That's what Croatia is doing now. It's not war, of course. It may be a proxy war in the worst case or some small skirmish in the South China Sea. But war is impossible when both countries have enough nuclear weapons. China doesn't have a lot, by the way. They are building it up right now. Dongfeng 41 intercontinental ballistic missile. They're just going to double it. It's not a big deal. It's still a fraction of what America has, and it's almost nothing compared to what Russia has. Croatia should be more like Serbia and try to benefit from both sides. This kind of sounds disingenuous. It's like lying, but that's what small countries should do. And some sort of compromise. Okay, you guys are fighting, but look, it's not a zero-sum game. You will both benefit in Croatia, and Croatia will benefit more than if it chooses only one. And actually, smart countries are doing that right now. Mostly in Africa and Latin America, Middle East, of course, Saudi Arabia, let's say. They're saying, you force us to choose? No, we're not going to choose. We choose both. We are not going to choose exclusively one. And that's smart. I just wanted to show this recently, that expert on China. His name is Branimir Vidmarovic. He's a really amazing guy. He sent me an email with this kind of graph that shows international trade with different countries. Who is trading more with China or more with USA? Beginning of 21st century, 2000 and 2020, the difference. Very good. You can see here. Share greater trade with United States, blue, China, orange. So this is 2000.
Yeah.
Almost everybody trades more with USA than with China, right?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, Serbia and Bosnia and Herzegovina, even then, that's interesting. But look at this, 2020.
Wow.
Really wow, look at this graph.
Very
is the graph.
interesting. I didn't know that as well.
That's why I said graph, because this is technically not really a graph. But anyway, so my point is China was always most developed and most populous economy in the world, not only during the Silk Road, but even before. I remember that the first million people city that we know of that has a census was Chang'an during the Tang Dynasty. 7th century, I think. It's today's Xi'an. It's a very important city. Only after Industrial Revolution started heating up in Great Britain, I guess London or some other cities finally surpassed China economically and by population. Of course, it goes together. China is just going back to where it was before, Zhongguo or Middle Kingdom. As they always say in the media, at least that's nice. They call it by the proper name. China is just coming back to being the center stage in the world trade. Chinese people have worked so hard in the last 40 years. That's absolutely unbelievable. By all criteria, the progress, even in space now recently, in the 100th anniversary of the Communist Party of China. So we should all learn from it. We shouldn't criticize it that much. But of course, we should criticize it objectively, in a good way, to make it better. Not criticize it because, America is falling down and they're afraid, like they were afraid they're going to lose to Japan before. They messed up Japan very nicely with Plaza Accords when they devalued the dollar, and also with tariffs. Basically, it's not about ideology. It's about America is afraid of the competitor that's almost certainly going to win with time. They're trying to sabotage and buy some time. It's sad, but to come back to Croatia, according to this graph and everything, still already more with China economically, trade more with China than the US. And that doesn't surprise me, actually. But we are still more with UE. UE is one trade zone. So it's not export or import, though. But anyway, we are still very dependent on them. So it will take Germany to become even more independent and stronger, and then we will too. And then hopefully we can reap benefits from all sides, as small dogs in that proverb should do.
Thank you very much. I've learned something new today as well.
I'm very happy to hear that.
As a point of information for our viewers, Croatia is part of NATO and is also the latest member of the EU. It joined in 2013. So what do you see the future of Croatia in the next few years? Do you think Croatia should join the Eurozone?
Of course it should, but I'm not macroeconomist. The monetary policy, the way the central banks operate, it's all like quantum physics to me. But I have some friends who have pretty good degrees in economy, and they all say yes, not only yes, but we should have done it a long time ago. Because Croatian kuna currency is already in a significant way pegged to euro. Probably similar how Hong Kong dollar is pegged to USD. I think it would benefit our exporters. It would also benefit importers, but they reaped huge benefits in Croatian market anyway. Benefit our tourism, definitely, and tourism is very important for us. I don't know why not. Euro should, and it will gradually become more kind of reserve currency than US dollar is. And I think that's great, because this status of US dollar as a reserve currency is a very problematic one. They call it printing money, but it's basically Fed buying back treasury bonds from commercial banks, pumping the free money in the system, keeping the interest rates low. And they can only do that without inflation or hyperinflation, because they are the world reserve currency. It's just not fair that one country have this kind of influence. That's post-World War II world order. It's about time that it gets changed. I would also like to see renminbi becoming stronger, but that's more complicated because China is more closed in a sense of Chinese banks, capital flight restrictions, etc.
Hvala vam puno to Franjo for coming on to our show.
Hvala puno, very good, very good.
Yeah, it's a really great honor to have you on. And if you like this video, please remember to give a thumbs up and also subscribe to our channel by pressing the red button below. We hope you all enjoyed today's Croatian episode, and please stay tuned for our next one. All right, bye.